Ciaran Flanagan, thank you so much for bringing me to your favourite bar, Neary's in Dublin.
And thank you, Gary, for joining me. Even if you are upstairs, I see.
I saw that, but I'm obviously different Neary's to you, but I've lovely chairs.
Yeah, you do. I actually, just on that, I mean, many years ago, I was meeting somebody in Neary's and it didn't work out. And it turned out that the person I was meeting, he was upstairs. And I was saying it to my wife afterwards, and she said to me, "Yeah, but who meets anybody upstairs in Neary's? Like, seriously, if you're meeting in Neary's, you're going to be downstairs." But anyway, we digress. No, it's a great bar. I love it. I love it, Gary.
Why so?
I've lived in Dublin now for about 20 odd years, and I kind of fell in love with Neary's because it doesn't have a TV. That's quite honestly it. There's no TV. Well, there's certainly no TV downstairs. But it's just a lovely, it just makes you feel like you're in the city. I mean, I have my own little tradition. Every Christmas Eve, I come into Neary's in the afternoon to, the last bit of shopping, sit in Neary's, and you just never know who you're going to meet. You might be meeting friends, or you might just be, the kids might be in town or whatever. You might be on your own. It's just a place you can be comfortable on your own in, or you can be comfortable with a group of people there. It's just,
and I get
a really nice bar. Yeah.
For people who are watching that maybe don't have such a public house culture, and that's what a pub is, a public house back in the day. It is that level of spontaneity of like getting a lucky bag when you go into your favourite bar, is you do meet all sorts.
Yeah, without a doubt, Gary. And you can go in and you can sit at the bar or sit anywhere in Neary's. And I don't know if you noticed this, you probably do, but people give off their body language if they want to be spoken to or they don't want to be spoken to. You get a fellow who's in there, probably a tough day in work, just wants to have a couple of points, whatever, doesn't really want to talk to anybody. Then you get the other fella, he's maybe like, I don't know, like a stork or a swan or whatever, meerkat with his head going around. And, the other fella might be up for a chat. So you just don't know who you're going to meet. It's great. It's a great bar. I love it. Love it. If I go missing, you'll find me there.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of, I mean, these are all sort of things that you pick up on, and probably we don't give enough credit to. But does this new thing about emotional intelligence and reading body language, facial language? I remember a barman telling me once that he didn't have to be told anything about emotional intelligence or visual signs and all that. Just work in a bar for a while, and it's all right in front of you. People when they're happy, sad, drunk, sober, angry. And I guess that's why it's important to do these human-facing jobs, part-time at least, if not more, when you're building up your career.
I think it's so true. I think with certainly with my kids, but with young people generally. I mean, if anybody asked me my view, I'd say get a job in a bar or a coffee shop, deal with the public at least at some point in your career, because you pick up you pick up on the life skills that you're going to need later.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'd certainly read body language. Yeah, for sure. But it's a great bar for that spontaneity, and there's lots of bars like that in Dublin. I mean, no TVs, like Grogan's, the Stag's Head. There's a nice little stable of bars that you can amble in, and you just don't know what's going to happen if you've got the time.
So you're upstairs, I'm downstairs. One of the doors open, and there's somebody there to have a pint with. Who would you most like?
Yes.
Who would it be, dead or alive?
Well, if it was alive, probably topically, because we're facing into the Rugby World Cup, it could be Andy Farrell. But honestly, if I'm really honest, I'd probably run out of rugby talk with Andy pretty quickly. I mean, I'm a rugby fan, but I'm not an expert, so I give him a pass on this. Do you know who I'd love to have a pint with? And it's going to, I think it will probably create sort of divisions. He's kind of somebody who's loved and hated in equal measure. But somebody I've read about, and somebody I kind of would have observed growing up, was Charlie Haughey. I'd love to sit in a bar and have a pint with Charlie Haughey and ask him about the arms trial, and ask him about negotiating with Britain, ask him about negotiating with the European Union, because he comes from clearly there are things that shouldn't have happened and all of that, but he comes from a time where we needed sort of streetwise, sharp guys out in front representing Ireland, a little bit like you do for us now, Gary, with the data center industry.
Thank you so much. Charlie, thank you for that.
But guys that are out there, wheeler dealers that are getting us a good deal. So, I think that he probably had a lot to talk about, but the end of his political career, as Enoch Powell said, it ended in failure anyway. So he didn't get maybe to fully reflect on everything. I think it'll be an interesting couple of points, and it's a conversation that could go on and on and on. It wouldn't be like 3 questions and we're done, because I think he probably liked to talk about his greatness and all he achieved.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure of that. But when you look at post-colonial countries, they've now recognized that there's 100-year cycle after before you start to get to having full democratic voting and stuff. I mean, we even have
for sure.
Civil War and all that type of stuff. But there's a part of it always where you have a democratic dictatorship. Irrespective, a democratic dictatorship. And you think about that, don't you? So what does that mean? It's a democracy, but it has to have someone who's making decisions. And there are sometimes outlier decisions. And to your point, we can talk about some of the Egyptian cotton shirts when everybody had to tighten their belt and that.
Yeah.
But when he was sitting down looking at the derelict quays, and he looked and said, I wonder, could we get one of the world's largest financial services district here within 10 years? I'd say there was a few fellas scratching their head going, Charlie, you've lost it completely.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, they did. And look, Garry, in certainly in my lifetime, I won't presume your age, but I think we're similar. This country has gone from being largely an agrarian society to being a bunch of software engineers. Let's be honest. It's been a massive transition in a very young country. And somebody said to me many years ago about Charlie High, now that we're revising, we're looking back and we're casting judgment on the way our political class has behaved in the 70s and 80s. So when you're thinking about going to negotiate with Europe, what sort of a guy do you want in the room? You want somebody who's maybe a little bit imperfect, maybe the rough diamond, maybe the wheeler dealer, maybe the guy who's not quite as transparent, maybe a little bit opaque. Maybe that's what we needed. And I'd say, actually, that's what we did need. And guys like him, like Albert Reynolds, that whole cadre of sort of educated, they were educated for sure, but they came from humble beginnings. And, I don't think they forgot that either.
And just to your point, when we look at 1982 to 2023, it was a wonderful thing I saw in the newspaper recently that Ireland's economy has gone from a potato to a chip economy.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm always intrigued. I deal with human resources, hiring people and all that, and we're always very delighted when we get to hire somebody, and it's a big part of doing business, hiring the right people. God almighty, Garry, I remember when I back in the day I got a job at Intel. I think it was 93. I thought I won the lotto.
Yeah.
There weren't that many of those jobs around. It was fantastic. So look, I think to hear the inside track from Charlie and what really had to happen, building up the IDA, putting Ireland in the right place, it might be interesting. It might be interesting.
So you might be of the same correct age bracket now to talk about people doing nice things for you and reflecting on what was the nicest thing anybody's ever done for you. What would it be?
God, yeah. I think niceness happens every day, and unfortunately, we're often too busy to notice. Right? Lots of people do nice things every day for lots of people. And you come across it every day in your life with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. But thinking back to that time, I had let's say I had a staggered start in college. I did engineering in Athlone, and first year didn't go as well as my parents might have anticipated. Let's put it that way. So anyway, I completely went down in flames in one of the subjects, and I was really struggling to get it back on track for the repeats. And it was in the summer months, and one of my lecturers, he made the point of ringing me at home, and he asked me how it was going. How it was going. And I was saying to him, look, yeah, I should be okay. And he wasn't convinced, and he took time out of his own weekend, and he came to my house. I went to his house for about 6 weeks over that summer, specifically to get me over the line with that subject. It was a summer off. He didn't have to do it. I wasn't certainly the most worthy student, but it was an act of kindness I never forgot. and I think it was an act of kindness that had a big impact on the rest of my education, because it got me back on the right track and got me moving again. And I've often thought about teachers generally. They've got, they really do interface with obviously our young people, but they really do have that opportunity to shape so many, so much of what people turn out to be. And sometimes I forget that, right? I forget that, teachers only paid a fraction of the chief executive of a bank, but teachers have so much of an impact, and educators have so much of an impact on the youth of a country. And we talked about Ireland and back in the 70s, and how education really was probably the lever. It was probably the needle that moved for us. But yeah, that was fantastic. That was fantastic for me. I never forgot it.
And I guess like yourself, myself, I find myself doing a bit of teaching, but not calling it teaching now, where you seem to be giving advice, whether sometimes you're asked for it, but often you're not. But it is skill, though. It's a real skill to teach someone without having bias or being cynical.
Yeah.
It's teaching truly is actually nearly knowing the subject that you're teaching and giving it to them in a way they can absorb, rather than what you'd like them to absorb. That's how real good teachers are.
Yeah. And it's vocational, right? It is. It's not about progression or money, in the sense that teaching in of itself is the objective. It's not like you're going to become a different teacher, or you may go into academia and do research, but it really is vocational, and it's such a huge impact on people's lives. I remember my first teacher. I remember back in the day it was called low babies, junior infants.
That's right.
I remember my first teacher. I don't remember my second teacher or my third teacher, but I remember my first teacher.
You must have been very bold, though. You were probably impressed with them, and by the second one, they had you sorted.
Yeah. I tended to be a bit chatty. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I was good.
So let's say that your numbers came in and you got £1 million. What in particular would you do with £1 million, or euros, or yen, or wherever you are today? What would you do with it?
What would I do with it? I presume you mean for the common good, for altruistic reasons. It can't just be for me, right?
Well,
yeah. No, I get it.
I think
Actually,
show, and it's a daytime show, so let's show some kind to communities.
I think actually, Gary, it's quite a theme now that we've got going here. When you think about how to impact society, or let's just take it in terms of Ireland, right? I won't try to solve the world's problems, but it's education, right? In the end, it's education that lifts up a society. I mean, I think about the opportunity we got, right? My generation versus my parents' generation. It was a big shift. It was a big investment by the government. I think if I had £1 million, I'd be looking for an opportunity to give it to some, somebody to either provide scholarships or some sort of educational impact for people that need a little bit of help, because it's expensive as well, right? Yeah,
no,
that would be it.
And a continuation of that, you and I probably were the first generation where our parents were so proud, weren't they, when we said we were going to our university and stuff?
Absolutely.
Now, what I'm seeing a trend, and just quickly on the point that you made, is that it's cool to be an apprentice again, or a technician again.
Thankfully, absolutely.
And that's what I think, with the knowledge that we have, that academia doesn't suit everybody full time, that sort of area where you can take all that experience and give people on their tools. I guess it was like Anko or type of thing before.
I did a job. I used to work for a Swiss company. I did the interview some years ago, and I met with one of the very senior managers, vice presidents or something. And we did the interview, and at the end of the interview, he asked me, "Do you have any questions?" And I said to him, "Well, you didn't really ask me much about my academic record." And he said, "I never went to college. I came up the company, Swiss, came up through the company as an apprentice, and I've worked my." And he subsequently had done education, but very proud of the fact that he was with that company all his life, and he started off as an apprentice technician and worked his way up. And it was you could see it was a source of pride, and I thought that was fantastic.
Well, I think we're in an era now, and more and more where algorithms and machines and stuff are going to help us do an awful lot of the more drudgery stuff. But it's actually going to be less about knowledge and more about turning up and applying yourself.
Yeah, attitude. Yeah,
and applying yourself. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, Ciaran, we've been all over the world. We've money. We've given away money. We've been very nice and kind, which is unusual for you and I when we get together. But it's been very interesting.
It's like a low fat. This is your life. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, good.
Low fat, and we actually spoke very nicely about Charlie Haughey. So you're absolutely right. There might be some suits on this one, but thank you so much, Ciaran. Look, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Gary. No, it's been my pleasure as well. Thank you, and thank you for all the work you do, flying the flag for our humble little island here.
Sure. Thanks so much. People like you can always ring to say, was I right?
Good man, Gary. Good man.
Thank you, Ciaran.